Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com, as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. Click subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, or at the YouTube channel, where you can also get quick takes of movies that I'm catching up with, or other stuff such as occasionally I will do other stuff, but usually it's just the quick takes in the podcast at YouTube, and that is plenty. I appreciate everybody who's subscribed at this point, and if you subscribe as a result of this, I appreciate it. You can also check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. There you will find, coming up, discussions of short film blocks at the Atlanta Film Festival. The 50th Atlanta Film Festival is coming up at the end of this month, and I will be covering it. Also have Oscar nomination discussions, Dragon Con Q&A excerpts, and more, as well as Life's Soundtrack and Leaving the Collection. That is at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. So it's funny because of the fact that the most recent, the little mini episode I did last of the podcast basically talked a little bit about what the inspiration for really diving deep into science fiction for me was this year. And this particular episode was very much the impetus. And it is the beginning of season 2, if you will, or continuation of our Fascism in Cinema series. And the topic is science fiction and the ways in which authoritarianism and fascism have been explored in science fiction. Join me is the person who helped really inspire this series and join me on the first episode last year. We talked about resistance and fascism in cinema, and he was recently on our excellent episode with Joan Amen on Network After 50 Years. Please join me in welcoming the host of Binge Movies as well as the Slashers podcast, Jason. Jason, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. So
I talked about it a little bit in my episode last time. So basically, my love of science fiction really boils down to a few things. Obviously, the visual aspect is extremely strong. I mean, you look at movies like Dark City and Blade Runner, and even something space fantasy like Star Wars, Star Trek 2001, as well as at least one of the films that we're going to be discussing in this episode. And there's always a breathtaking way in which the visuals just capture the imagination in this genre. Next, as I got older, it became as much about the ideas, the fact that science fiction is so beautifully and uniquely capable of taking outrageous and almost impossible scenarios and reflecting our modern society. And it is something that filmmakers have done over this past century plus of film. You see it in the writing of everyone from Mary Shelley to Jules Verne to H.G. Wells to even Isaac Asimov, Philip K. Dick, and Robert Heinlein, who we will discuss later in this episode. And it's the combination of those two aspects that's so intriguing to me. It's something that really resonates with the strongest aspects of science fiction. So it's not really a surprise that filmmakers and writers have used the trappings of science fiction to talk about the idea of fascism, to talk about the idea of authoritarianism. And I thought as soon as I came up with it, as soon as I thought of this idea for this episode, I thought it was fantastic. And there's one choice in here that's really obvious. The other two, as I think we will get into, are as obvious, are obvious in their own ways, especially as we get into the meat and bones of the discussions. So we haven't really, you and I haven't really talked a lot about the setup for this episode, and we've talked a little bit about science fiction over the years, but not a lot. So I wanted to ask you while we have you on, what is it about science fiction for you that is so intriguing as far as the best science fiction films that you've seen?
I think I've always been interested in not just the what, but the why. Mm-hmm. Right? Not. I'm one of these people who I don't just want to know what time it is. I actually do want to know how the clock is made, and so I've always gravitated towards the soft sciences, things like history and sociology. And I think a lot of the better science fiction, even if it's poppy and fun and popcorny, the better science fiction is sort of like applied sociology. It's taking things that we know about human nature, that we know about human civilization and human instinct and human behavior patterns, and is putting it in a different world, a parallel world, the past, the future, an alternative history, whatever the setup is, to show us something that is true about ourselves, and more often than not, something that's always been true.
Yeah.
And I think when we get to our first film, that's a silent film from almost the dawn of, theatrical film. That's German expressionist, silent film from 100 years ago, effectively. And is extraordinarily as relevant as ever.
Yeah.
Which just shows you how little has changed in a century.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's funny because, you said basically 100 years old. It is 99 years old. Right. So we're 1 year short of the anniversary. Yeah. And the film we're, of course, alluding to is Fritz Lang's Metropolis, staggering science fiction epic.
Can I pull so let me pull the curtain back a little bit. Brian decides he wants to do 3 movies, per his style, and decides to do not just Metropolis, but the complete Metropolis, which is 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
It was discovered in Argentina, I think in 2008 or something like that.
Released that was by it.
Kino Lorber in 2010, restored as best as they could. And so we have a 2.5 hour epic science fiction German expressionist film, which may be the single most influential movie in film history, not just science fiction. It is the most influential film in science fiction history. Without it, you don't get Star Wars, you don't get Blade Runner, all the movies that you mentioned up front. So many of them I like. Maybe you still get Star Trek, but not much else. And he said, okay, we really got to be brief on this episode. So somehow, we could talk full length of this episode just about Metropolis.
Right.
We could do a 4-hour episode on Metropolis. And yet we got to talk about that in 2 other films. So Brian has set a challenge before us. So I have my eye on the clock. I'm going to write it down. I know exactly what time it is now. And we're going to try to talk about the most influential film in cinema history outside of Citizen Kane in a handful of minutes. So wish us well, dear listener.
Yeah. So what Jason is alluding to is the fact that the last 2 times he's joined me on Sonic Cinema by himself, we've topped it with 3 hours plus on those episodes. Our sexploitation episode, as well as the Resistance to Fascism episode that
that's 100% my fault.
Talked about last year. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, if I would love nothing more. I love nothing more talking to Jason. He's one of my absolute favorite people to talk to on the podcast. He's just wonderful. But I'm like, you know what? We really do want to try and rein it in. I think I made a joke when we were on the network episode that was, or if we didn't, I meant to, where it's like Joan was the one who was going to rein us into not talking about that movie for 3 hours.
Yeah. That's another one. Here, can you talk about one of the greatest movies ever made that is like resonates on every single level and is one of your personal favorite films, and just keep it short? So you keep doing this to me.
Well, we went into 90 minutes.
We did.
We did 90 minutes on that.
Setting these challenges
90 minutes on that.
You're setting these challenges for me. Asking me to be brief about these movies specifically. I could do 3 hours on our second film alone, and you're asking me. You're like the Joe Rogan of podcasters. And I don't mean current Joe Rogan. I mean Joe Rogan when he was having people eat donkey penis. You're putting these challenges before me that you know I'm not going to be able to complete, and I somehow have to rise to the occasion. So I don't mean you're the Joe Rogan in terms of fascism. I mean you're the Joe Rogan in terms of fear factor. So
I'm still not quite sure how to take that, but no, I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I mean, one of the things, I don't think we've really talked about it here, but before we get to Metropolis, just a little bit of tangent. So I think the idea of the 3 movies, when it comes to a particular subject, goes back to an episode I did in 2018 with the wonderful Chris Esper, whom I love having, one of my favorite filmmakers I've gotten a chance to meet, talk to. We talked about the work of Andrei Tarkovsky. When I say we talked about the work of Andrei Tarkovsky, we talked about all of it. We talked about all 7 of his features, as well as his diploma film.
Yeah, and was that a 90-minute episode?
It was around 2.5 hours. It was pretty long, but the thing that occurred to me is that if I'm talking about a particular subject or a particular filmmaker, it's got to be central. It's got to be more focused. And so I think the next episode I did after that was comparable was our David Lynch episode with my friends Jeffrey Butzer and Matthew Timms. And we were talking about which 3 Lynch films would go. And it was right around the time that Twin Peaks: The Return came out. And we were talking about like which three Lynch films we would talk about. And Mulholland Drive was an easy one because of the fact that it was arguably his most acclaimed at that point. We did Blue Velvet because it's arguably his best known outside Mulholland Drive. And then we talked about Inland Empire, which was his final feature film. And so, and what we found in that discussion was, even though we were only talking about, and we would obviously talk about other films throughout, we would bring out other films, other projects, but it was easier to focus in on a basic idea of a theme to an episode by focusing in on a handful of films. So that's kind of where, I mean, we had done other episodes where it was 3 movies before this. Chris Esper and I did one on Scorsese's Faith trilogy of Last Temptation of Christ, Kundun, and Silence back in 2017. And so that's kind of where the idea of the 3 movies kind of went from. And, you know, one of the things that I've loved in talking about this project with you, Jason, is how we've found different ways to approach these subjects in a wide variety of films. I mean, you're the one who brought up the idea of Footloose for the first episode we did.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would not have given that one a second thought for that until I started thinking about it. It's like, you know what? That actually tracks. You know, yeah, that could be an interesting topic.
Every once in a while, I'm good for something like that. Just every once in a while, I'll pull something out of the
Oh,
pocket. Yeah.
dude, don't I mean, yes, you introduced me to
Trancers?
no, I actually, I'm fine with transfers. It was what was no
Oh,
Rockadoodle.
Rockadoodle.
And yeah, I mean, I love you, Jason, but
Yeah.
I don't know that. I think that put a damper on our relationship
You've
in a
never
way that
seen
I'm
Don
never going to
Bluth.
recover from.
Yeah, you've never seen Don Bluth.
But but no, the fact of the matter is, I mean, part of the reason, and this is one of the things you did so beautifully on Binge Movies, where it's like you picked, like that Don Bluth episode was such a great episode to talk about because, like, I'd seen a handful of the films, but I hadn't seen a couple of others. So it was in those 5 films, even though we didn't touch on his later stuff, you can still talk about the later stuff, but you're focused in on the evolution of the artist throughout film to film. And I mean, especially with these big theme episodes like the fascism in cinema, what's been great is being able to focus in on that theme, but approaching it from different angles. So, it's funny because of the fact that when you're talking about, you mentioned Metropolis being the most influential science fiction film of all time. And I agree with that. Because of the long shadow it has from a visual standpoint. The fact of the matter is, it's like, it's weird because it had been I think it had been 5-6 years since I'd seen it last. I think the last time I watched it was during COVID. And when I had plenty of time to watch 2.5, 3-hour movies on the regular.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing that really struck me this time, and I'd seen the movie a number of times in a number of different formats. I mean, I've seen the two-hour version, which was the most easily accessible one in terms of you could buy a VHS of it or buy a DVD of it, and it was the most readily available. I don't think I've ever seen the 84-minute one that was cut by Giorgio Moroder.
I haven't
scored
either.
by him.
I've
heard that. I've got that soundtrack. It is really wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that version of it. And then of course, when the complete Metropolis came out, by this point I absolutely loved the movie. And so you had, if you're a cinema fan, if you're a fan of this movie, you're like, oh my God, this is almost complete. And the thing, I think they did a great job of restoring it. And I think the ideas I think the this is the only one that, and one of the things that's unique about this one is that it's the only one of these 3 movies that is not based on a short story, a novella, or novel.
Isn't it based on, isn't Metropolis a novel?
I don't think so. I think it is. I thought it was an original. Let me see.
No, it's based on the 1925 novel the same name.
Wow.
Which
okay.
Was,
that's an L for me.
But I think the novel was always written with an idea of a movie attached to it.
Right.
I think it was written with the intention of that it would be a movie.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like nobody even like, it's not like the third movie we're going to be talking about where the novel was famous well before the movie that came out.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both on equal standing of, if you know this, chances are you either as the novel or the book or the movie or both.
Right.
But yeah. No, and the thing that was really striking this last rewatch is how, like, Metropolis has always been I've always been aware of the class consciousness aspect of it, the haves and the haves not, the billionaire oligarch class versus the working class. But this one the complete version really hammers that home even more profoundly than I think the 2-hour version did.
You can definitely see why the Weimar Republic and was like, we got to censor this. Like, you can see why it was cut to shreds.
Yeah,
because it's pretty radical. I mean, it's not as radical as I think people would want it to be, because it floats around on the idea that there needs to be a mediator between the ruling class, this sort of ignorant, sheltered ruling class. Maybe not the tippy top, because the tippy top is not. They are aware of what the blood that's causing the machines to run, basically, but the sons of the tippy top, right, who live in the the eternal gardens and just have art, leisure, and ignorance, and then the idea is there needs to be a mediator between them and their brothers, their sisters down in like the machine city part.
Yeah,
and I think that wouldn't necessarily sell today. We're definitely in this very rising tide of eat the rich mentality that's spreading. Ironically, like kind of it's in our deeply polarized times, it's kind of the one thing that we agree on. Like the one bipartisan thing that's like everybody was sort of like, yeah, was when Luigi shot that guy. Like people are like, even if you don't condone violence, you understood why. You're like, okay, I don't believe in political violence. I don't believe in that kind of thing. But like nobody was surprised that a health insurance guy got fucking blown away, right? Like,
yes.
And even if you're like, I don't like violence, nobody mourned that dude.
And I mean, even if you're, that's actually a pretty great example. And, even if you're not somebody who subscribes to the idea that we need to transition to universal health care in this country, you've had enough struggles and anxiety with regards to healthcare to where, you're not feeling any sorrow whatsoever.
None.
Like because you understand why somebody would do that.
So I don't think that we're in an era of, and maybe we're worse off for this, right? I'm not saying that this is a good thing. I'm just saying the temperature. I think the one thing that like what has aged the worst in terms of this movie is this kind of sentiment that, well, what actually just needs to happen is the upper echelon, the 1%, and the people who make the world work need to come together, and somebody needs to be able to be a mediator, because we're all just brothers and sisters. Now, I will put like an exception on this, and I'm going to try to be brief, and let me take this in a really weird direction for a second. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. There's the famous little story in the Gospels, Gospel of Mark in particular, which is the earliest of the Gospels, where Jesus of Nazareth finds himself outside of the borders of Israel. And for that matter, like that's even like people who believe in a historical Jesus think that this was probably likely a construction. Even if some of the sayings probably came from a real historical figure, this little venture into Gentile country outside of the borders of Israel was probably a story construction to make a point. But it's famous because he calls a woman a dog, which was a Jewish term that was used for non-Jews, Gentiles, which is like most of us, and it's an ethnic slur, and so it's like it's one of those uncomfortable things where it's like, oh, Jesus uses an ethnic slur. So it kind of goes against the whole sort of enlightened teacher, maybe divine figure who's just like peace, love, and whatever. What's really interesting about that story is, so like the context here, your Sunday school lesson is the woman approaches Jesus and she's like, her little daughter has a demon, is being tormented by a demon. And so the way that the story begins is written in such a way to force you as the audience member to really sympathize with the mother. Mm-hmm. And Jesus has been casting out demons since Act 1, Scene 1, basically, almost, of this gospel. And the Gospel of Mark's really cinematic. It just moving, scene after scene after scene. And it just moves and moves and moves. And it's structured in a way where it's constantly like there's Chekhov guns all over the place. And so your expectation is, well, of course he's going to do it, because we've seen this. And instead, he's rude to her. He uses this ethnic slur. You're shocked. You're offended on the woman's behalf. And then he says, it's not fit to give the children's bread to the dogs. And what he's basically saying is like healing, the inbreaking of God's kingdom. This is for the Jewish people. You're not Jewish. Terms and conditions apply, and they don't apply to you, basically. And there's a little phrase in there where he says first. And she goes, her response is very witty and very quick in the story. And she goes, yes, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the table. And he says, okay, your child is healed because of her answer. And you're like, wow, Jesus, that's pretty rude. Except for the thing that we miss is the context there is that she's a Syro-Phoenician woman. So she's a woman who's a descendant of the Syro-Phoenician Empire. She's in a place called Tyre. Tyre is still there to this day. Tyre was known in the ancient world because it was a port city, but a lot of the Mediterranean wealth was at. And the way that they acquired their wealth and their opulence, their decadence, was through extraction. And one of the things that they would do is most of their food was grown, or I should say a lot of their food was grown in this region called the Galilee, which is where Jesus is from, historic, like traditionally. And the best crops, the best food would be sent from the Galilee to Tyre for them to eat. And people would literally starve in the Galilee. And so there's a little double thing that's going on there. The story is putting us in a position to sympathize with somebody who would have been seen as an oppressor. But at the same time, she's not getting off scot-free because they were literally taking the children's bread. They were literally taking food from the children of Israel for themselves, to feed themselves. And so it's a little bit more of a complicated story. And it immediately makes me think of the fact that the vast majority of Europe's food comes out of Africa. And when we think of Africa, we think, in America, we have all these like images of impoverished, starving children, and they can't grow food there. That's actually not true. Northern Africa has very, very rich soil and can grow all kind of stuff. There's just acre after acre after acre after acre of lush fields of fruits and vegetables and all kind of stuff. All of that gets shipped to Europe, the global north. For us, in North America, most of our food is coming out of Central, South America, and some out of Mexico.
Yeah.
And so what you realize is, like, this movie positions it as being top down. And yeah, there's a metaphor there of like the 1% and then the working class. When you realize if you look at it on a global scale, we're the Tyrians. We're the lady in the story who's like stealing bread out of children's mouths. We're not the Galileans. We are, and in the United States, even though there's a class above us for sure, we are that class to the rest of the world. We are extracting incredible precious resources and wealth from those nations to provide us the food and luxuries while they starve, while they go without. So as easy as it is for us maybe to be like, oh, well, just, kill the 1%. Globally speaking, we are the 1%. And almost anybody listening to this, like, you may not be the 1% in your country, but globally speaking, you very likely are in the top 1% of the world. So as much as we're like, kill the oligarchs, we're just somebody else's oligarchs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like once you start really learning and really taking in the history of imperialism and colonialism around the world with regards to what Europe did, what the United States has done, what the United States continues to do, it makes sense that in a way, I mean, if you're going to, in a way, we are very much Freighter in the beginning of this movie, where we are part of the ruling class when it comes to the world in general, but we don't think about where our goods necessarily came from.
We're not the decision makers.
No.
Like his father.
Yes.
But we are the beneficiaries.
Yes. That is what I was trying to get at. Yes, you are correct.
Yep.
And no, I mean, that's one of the things that is so fascinating about this movie is because of the fact that you do see there are tiers of oppression. Like Frederiksen oppresses his son because of the fact that he just disregards what he says. He does not care what he says. He has some empathy, he has some care for him because of the fact that he heard that he was in the workers in the workers city, and that could have gone bad. But he's worried for not because of the fact that he has real empathy towards Frater, but he was worried about what the workers would do to him.
Yep. So back in the Twitter days, you were a big time tracker of a lot of the tech bros and conspiracy world and all that sort of stuff. Like for years and years, you've been following the Elons and the Teals and all these fucking wackadoos for a long time. And there is this I think this thought that they are kind of this new strain of a uniquely evil kind of wealthy person. That they are, because they're so cartoonish and so stupid, ultimately, and so inhumane that it feels like you're in a bad movie serial or something. It feels like you're in a bad Flash Gordon or something. Like it feels like if you wrote the script, if I wrote a movie and I made a villain like Peter Thiel, you'd be like, this sucks.
No.
This is bad writing.
Yeah.
And you've been following those guys for a long time, but I think this movie, first of all, the super villain constructions of the action serials and superhero films, I mean, those were the robber barons. The robber barons were cartoonishly evil in different people. Mm-hmm. Some of them were afraid of going to hell, and so they would occasionally do things for the civic good. But most of them were cartoonishly evil, But even before that, going back in a similar era, but in the 20s, his father is, I wouldn't call him cartoonish. I mean, that's more of the mad scientist sort of guy who's more of the cartoonish sort of supervillain. But we think of the coldness and the indifference. Right now we have all these AI bros who are it's just going to displace hundreds of millions of people, and you better get a welding job, otherwise you're going to starve to death. Tough shit. That just is what it is. That is no different than the people who were at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution that caused people like the Luddites to emerge. And this is a film that is coming in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, effectively. And from obviously a very German perspective, but there's this rapid industrialization of Europe that is happening. And this movie is in a response to that people are becoming slaves to machines. And yes, you take that to its science fiction conclusion, eventually you have a robot. But we're at the precipice of this event again. They're trying to turn this AI revolution into the next industrial revolution, effectively. I think that you and you're a little bit older than me, but we have a kind of we're kind of this anomalous generation because we're post-war kids. We're not baby boomers. You're Gen X. I'm a Zennial. And so we grew up in an era of relative peace and stability, but our cultural relationship to the wealthy, at least for a blip of time, throughout the 70s, I would say, to the 90s. It kind of started to turn with Bill Gates because Bill Gates was a villain by the end of the 90s. Definitely in the early 2000s, but like there was like a 30-year period in which the wealthy industrialist, Feder's father kind of figure, like their image was rehab, the image of the Rockefellers, the image of these kind of people. They became something to aspire to be rather than something to revolt against.
Well, and part of that is because, especially when you're talking about the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, at the time, they were basically taking this technology of the computer. And that had been very, very much off limits to a lot of people who weren't working with them on a regular basis.
Very true.
They democratized it in the sense of bringing it to homes. So now we can learn this new technology. We can experience this new technology.
It was almost rebellious.
Yeah. And then you have the advent of email. Then you have commercial email. You have the World Wide Web, all of that stuff. And there's certainly been a benefit to that for humanity in the sense that, like, I did not know you up until like 6 years ago.
Right.
And I would not have known about you, and I would not have met you if it weren't for the technology that was started when we were growing up and has evolved in the way that it has now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think like our unique relationship is, I guess it probably even goes back to like the post-war or all these modern conveniences. All this like production at scale because of World War II and after World War II, and then like the U.S. being flush with money create that sort of like TV dinner culture where convenience became king, and the dishwasher and the television and all this kind of stuff. But like we grew up in this era in which like it was a blip, and we're not there anymore. But the blip is like technology exists to make all of our lives better. It's not going to displace us. It's going to give us more leisure time and more freedom and more connection. It's going to create the global village. We were very, very optimistic about technology. Now, there was always an undercurrent of your Verhoevens, your RoboCops, like this kind of stuff. It's like, but like even something like Star Wars, like the droids are not presented as like villains. Obviously, like Terminator's an exception, stuff like that. But we were given a lot of short circuit. We were given a lot of like technology is your friend. Technology is good. Like, and again, I'm not trying to be a Luddite, but I'm saying like Metropolis is more akin to how humanity has mostly viewed technology, because technology has been used, industry has been used mostly for oppression.
Yes.
And after the Reform era and the Progressive era and the Second World War, you had strong unions, you had strong workers' rights because people took their bosses out into the street and beat them to death, right? Like you had all of these progressive advancements at the very least in American society. So you were kind of getting, for this brief moment, sort of the best of all worlds. These businesses were heavily regulated, heavily taxed, and also workers had strong rights. That obviously changes from 1984 forward because of Ronald Reagan and just the complete destruction of America by Republicans. But it's taken a while for the fullness of the effects of those policies to really, really hit us, and that's where we're living now. But like Metropolis is the view that is more accurate to history than our anomalous experience as being people the age that we are. And so I think like the machine of AI is like just the idea of connecting like the Tower of Babel and Moloch and like all of these sort of Jewish Hebrew Bible, Jewish scripture, like all of these like very long-standing apocalyptic imagery, and then obviously bring in the Book of Revelation. So I wasn't completely off base bringing the Gospels in.
No, not at all.
There's like a tying together of these motifs of oppression and these motifs of the more industrialized, wealthier empire owning, oppressing, exploiting, extracting, and sacrificing, almost in an apocalyptic blood ritual of just sacrificing the lives of people to keep the convenience for the elites going. Like, we're living through a time where I think what has happened is that veil, that sane washing that was applied to the wealthy industrialist in the tech gurus and all this shit that we grew up with that I was just talking about. I think that false face, that false front, that veil has been torn down. And we're realizing that people like Bill Gates, you know, he's on the fucking Epstein list, right? Like these guys are, you know, Sam Altman met his husband in Peter Thiel's hot tub at some kind of weird, like, sex ring party. Like these are like, what is being revealed is that, oh, these were not revolutionaries and geniuses. This is just, we're not in an age of monsters. It's always been an age of monsters. And that's kind of Metropolis's sort of point. Now, I think Metropolis is a little bit slightly more optimistic.
Yes.
But one of the things that I want to touch on, though, before I lose my train of thought, is that I do also think it's interesting, and this is extraordinarily relevant too, is that the person who is really the spark of the revolution is Maria.
Yes.
And because they can't beat Maria, they co-opt her.
Yes.
And they co-opt her image, and they use technology to co-opt her image to get the working class basically to kill itself. And I think that that's really, I think it's very, very accurate to history that it's a woman who is at the forefront of social change and conscientiousness. You know, it was women who were at the front for to create like the Department of Education and getting kids out of factories in America and globally. It's been women who have fought, and oftentimes women of color who have been on the forefront of basically every civil rights advancement we've ever had in this country, and that's true around the world.
Yeah.
And it's always these systems of economic, the structure of this, the top-down hierarchical social control through hierarchy systems, whether it's capitalism, industrialism, Christian nationalism, Christian fundamentalism, whatever, right? Like techno, feudalism, it almost always is trying to silence, co-opt, or strip the voice from women. And we're seeing that now. Like we're living through that in our fascist moment right now, where like one of the things that the text bros and the trad Catholics and the reformed Nazis and all of these fuckers can agree on is that, well, women shouldn't have any rights at all.
Yeah.
And again, they're coming for Maria, as it were, you know, the women who are at the forefront. And by the way, even in America, it's been women over the last decade who've been at the forefront, where a lot of even liberal men could sort of like poo-poo and sort of like, yeah, it's disgusting, but like the comments about grabbing women by the pussy, like, oh yeah, it's disgusting, it's vulgar, it's rapey, it's awful. But it was women who were at the forefront going, no, you don't understand what that means. What that means is that this guy has a predatory rapist mentality, and that is the root of fascism. The idea of, I got a tiny dick and I'm probably closeted in some way, my sexuality is twisted, and I compensate for it by abusing and sexually exploiting women and children. Like, that's textbook fascism. So this guy is going to be a dictator. And it took the culture up until, I think, this year for a major swath of the rest of the culture to realize, oh, what he did in Venezuela, what he's trying to do in Iran, that's rape.
Yeah.
What he's doing in Minneapolis is rape, right? Like just snatching the voter roll, like that's rape, right? Like he's raping democracy. He's raping the country. He's abusing and raping all of us every single day that we wake up in fucking terror because we don't know if he's going to nuke us or kill us or sick an army on us or start World War III or whatever, because he's just him and Hegseth and all these guys, their only mentality is take what you want by brute force. The mentality of we bomb the shit out of you and we grab your resources, we grab your oil. It's the same thing behind grab them by the pussy. Because when you're famous, they just let you do it, right?
Yeah.
When you're America, they just let you do it, and that's the kind of mentality where it doesn't exactly go to rape, but the fact that they then like take Maria, create a clone of her, right? Co-opt her image, immediately make her a sex object.
Yeah.
This robot, like the robot Maria, the faux Maria, and have her like dance and seduce and memorize the Epstein class of their day, while also like inciting violence and to create further polarization so that there is no class consciousness and class solidarity against the actual ruling class. Like, buddy, Brian, that's the moment we're living in.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's also gets to and I'm glad that you went into it because of the fact that, I mean, I was about to have there myself when it comes to the idea of evil Maria. This idea of using machinery to manipulate the masses.
Yes.
Which is what we see with AI now, which is what we've seen with social media over the past decade plus, which is what we've seen in terms of the Chan culture and what we've seen in terms of YouTube and shock and monetization of polarizing content. And
now it's coming out of the official channels of the White House.
Yeah.
The stuff that 5-6 years ago, Brian, you would do commentary on Twitter and be like, this is rotting society from its core. This kind of like you said, like this like 4chan edgelord troll behavior, this racist shit.
Yeah.
It's now like, we're not even 6 months removed from the President of the United States posting a video of him taking a literal shit on our heads.
Yeah.
And then posting the Obamas as apes.
Yeah.
And then saying, and then calling for genocide.
Which he literally just did on True Social
right.
the day before we recorded this.
Yeah.
With Iran. And it's one of those things where
that's 4chan shit.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the thing is, it's like, look, I could go on and on. I do think Trump suffers from cognitive decline issues, whether it's dementia or something else, because of the fact that I've seen a lot of the same things in him I saw through my mother in the last few years of her life. Yeah. But no, I mean, the thing is, it's like, I want to go back a little bit before we get back into the movie. You mentioned Short Circuit earlier. Yeah. And the thing that I think is interesting about that in the context of what you were talking about is that, yes, it's this whole idea of good AI, of a good robot. But what was Johnny Five's initial purpose? He was a piece of machinery for war. Yep. And through a freak accident is why he had a personality of his own and was able to be adaptable to humanity. Yep. And so, you're absolutely right about Maria. I mean, she is the heart of the movie, and it's her words that you basically quoted early on. The mediator between the head and the hands must be the heart. And yes, that remains true. Even if we're as far away from that happening as we've ever been as a civilization, as humanity, I feel like we're as far away from that as possible, as far as being able to come together. But as people with ultimately a common goal. And one of the things that has been so, and I mean, I'm gonna go into a couple of different I'm gonna mention a couple of other science fiction films that I really love that are a great example of that, I think. And the first one just came out recently, Project Hail Mary, which I think ultimately is a great example of people and species coming together for a greater good.
Yep.
And then the other one is Arrival, where communication is so fundamental to the world not annihilating itself.
Yes.
And if we just communicate honestly, openly, and empathetically with others, and had that reciprocated in kind with other people and species, we could actually do a lot of good.
Yes.
And it was the fact that Maria is Rotwing and Fredersen, who put aside their differences.
Yeah.
Because they have history that goes back because of the fact that the scientist was jealous because Fredersen married the woman they loved.
Yes.
And you're right, they use Maria in a way that co-opts her image and her influence over the working class to lead them to riot, lead them to almost kill their own.
Yes.
And also uses her as a sex object. And I mean, it's absolutely striking that is as relevant social commentary for the time we are in now, with the use of AI, with the use of social media, with the use of spectacle.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That we've ever seen. I mean, look at, there's been and the thing is, it's like, this movie is not far removed, and I think you're absolutely right. It's also important to remember, this movie is came out not far from removed from the suffrage movement of the early 20th century.
Nope.
So, I mean, that is completely a huge part of the larger thematic storytelling in this movie, and it's extraordinary. We
live in a world, right, where there was a very attractive, blonde-haired, blue-eyed female veteran or active service Army fighter pilot, I think, who had a huge social media following in right-wing circles, just be revealed to be a completely fictitious person.
Yeah.
And the best way to describe it is sort of right-wing patriotism and obviously sort of very Aryan coded, right?
Yes.
This is the ideal woman, right? It's a lot of the same shit we're seeing with Erica Kirk. It just so happens Erica Kirk is such
I was just going to bring her up, yes.
It just so happens that she's such a weirdo that, like, she gives even people on the right kind of the ick.
Yeah.
But, like, she's, this sort of, like, there's the type, right? It's like the Megyn Kelly type, right? It's like, it's the blonde hair. It's a Fox News type, right? It is the blonde hair, blue-eyed, prominent cheekbones, Aryan, waspy kind of look, right? Perfect teeth, perfect lips. And it's like, and all these other women are literally disfiguring themselves to try to fit in. Caroline Leavitt, to some extent, has disfigured herself to try to be that person. And you get that weirdo Mar-a-Lago face. And it's like, she's a complete AI creation. She's not real. She never existed. And it's like, that's not exactly co-opting a real person, but it's very, very similar, right? It's less.
Well, it's co-opting an image. It's co-opting an image. It's co-opting an ideal.
Yes.
That right-wing men.
Yes.
Have said, this is the ideal woman that I want women to be.
Like powerful but pliable.
Yes.
Like she's got to be my mom. She's got to take care of me, but she can never make me feel inferior.
Yeah.
Like she's got to nanny me, but not make me feel like a child. I got to feel like a big boy. I got to feel like I'm in charge. But meanwhile, she's got to really be competent and have her shit together because I can't function in life. Yeah, she's just very tone body, perfect.
It's also the Oedipal complex.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's also very much the Oedipus complex.
And that's kind of in Metropolis too, though, right? Because like you just touched on it. Is like, okay, I might be saying her name wrong, but it's like Hell or Heel or whatever is Fetter's mother, which was, and she was stolen effectively from the mad scientist by Fetter's father, and she died in childbirth. So the mad scientist wants to get revenge on the son because he's like, basically, you killed the woman that I love. Your birth killed the woman I love, and it's driven him insane. But so he's built this machine for the specific purpose of resurrecting his lost love, who is just also happens to be someone similar to Maria, right? Who Vetter is in love with, or infatuated with. And so it's like, okay, this whole sort of bizarro kind of Oedipal, the perfect woman is like this benevolent yet powerful figure, right? Because she's the one that brings the children up from the machine city to the eternal gardens to show them their brothers and sisters. And she's the one, before they're shuffled back down into to hell, she's the one that's like, look, your brothers and sisters, right? Like, and that's like his awakening. And his infatuation with her and his curiosity about who are these brothers and sisters is what leads him down to Machine City, where he sees people being injured and hurt and dragged away from the Molech machine, and he has the sort of apocalyptic visions of sort of biblical ideas of human sacrifice, basically.
And Moloch, of course, is another piece of iconography, demonic iconography that has been persistent in conspiracy theories like QAnon over the years.
Yeah, and it's very, very, very relevant for like the pro-life movement.
Yeah,
because there's no historical evidence for this, but within right-wing Christian circles, they believe that Moloch was a deity who, I can't remember if it was the Hittites or Canaanites, but one of their Israel's ancient rivals allegedly sacrificed children to Moloch. There's a lot of problems with that. Partly, I think Moloch doesn't actually exist. So Moloch is a mistranslation. It's a corruption of the text. There was no ancient god named Moloch, and there is no evidence that any child was ever sacrificed to them. So, but where they get right-wing Christians with this, especially of the more charismatic Pentecostal New Apostolic Reformation stripe, is who are into a lot of things like spiritual warfare, and there's like demons behind everything, and have a very supernatural worldview and reject the Enlightenment and empiricism. Their perception of this is that like basically this is just a modern equivalent of this ancient, that what's behind Planned Parenthood is an abortion, is a literal demon spirit that is requiring the slaying and the shedding of the blood of the innocent. And then that ends up getting morphed because of the Chan culture, which, come to find out, may very well actually tie into fucking Epstein, which is just fucking nuts. But anyway, they then tie that together and basically say like, oh, and there's this wealthy class of elites who who are Moloch worshippers because they're actually demons, and they are drinking the blood of the innocent as well to live forever, or adrenochrome, or whatever it is. It's morphed over time. And then of course, ironically, when it come to find out the guy who helped plant the seeds, the two people who helped plant the seeds of that originally, that those ideas, which of course were always anti-Semitic and just very twisted and bizarre, is a guy who's part of a wealthy elite ruling class who aren't eating children that we know of, maybe, but are at the very least trafficking and raping them.
Yes.
And basically helps to create this mythology to anesthetize and inoculate sane people from ever believing that such a thing were possible, because it's actually what they're doing. A version of it, right? There's a kernel of truth there. And it's like a giant fucking psyop to get a bunch of wackadoos to believe a bunch of Christian nationalists, conspiracy theory, UFO mumbo jumbo. So it's so scrambled it doesn't make any sense. So that if anything were to leak, they have the perfect cover, which is, well, that just sounds like a conspiracy theory. And turns out there is a conspiracy, and it's not a theory, because the current U.S. government is doing everything in their power to not give us any kind of transparency, despite what the law and bipartisan support says. And you're 100% right. And we're living through so many dimensions of this, which just proves the point that 100 years later, fascism hasn't changed. The evils of industry and wealth inequality have not changed. The kinds of people who find themselves at the top, deranged scientists with personal grievances who try to co-opt and denigrate women and children and exploit women and children and prevent women from gaining any influence and power, that hasn't changed. People who intentionally stoke political divisions so that class consciousness can never come into effect, because it turns out there's a fuck ton more of us than there are of them.
Yeah.
And so if the majority of people who go in America who are going to go bankrupt if they have to go to a dentist, despite working full-time jobs and having insurance, could actually partner with the people in the global South, the world could be a better place.
Yeah.
But we got to topple Babylon. We've got to topple the Tower of Babylon.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the Eternal Garden may not be as quote unquote nice as it currently is? I mean, sure. But it also means that nobody's going to be cast into the fires of Moloch. No one's going to be grounding the gears of the Machine City, which we also have to say, despite you being infinitely wrong about this entire Machine City is completely stolen for parts of Zion in the Matrix sequels.
Yes, I do think you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, you were, and one of the things you brought up is this age-old idea of blood libel, which is an anti-Semitic creed of Christian children being sacrificed by Jewish people. And, that's where the adrenochrome comes from. That's where that's where so many of these ideas come from.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, we could go on about Epstein and all that. The one thing I will say about Epstein is there's the last time they talked about him on the QAA podcast, when they talked about the file release, they did talk about the idea that Epstein met with the original creator of 4chan.
Yep.
And they do theorize on why that meeting took place. I don't necessarily think it has anything to do with QAnon or Pizzagate, because of the fact that Moot was gone from 4chan a couple of years before those came up. It just happened to coincide with the creation of the poll board on 4chan, which is where Pizzagate and QAnon started. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I don't necessarily know that Epstein or Steve Bannon, who's the other person I'm guessing you were talking about there. Bannon, I could kind of see maybe greasing the wheels on QAnon and Pizzagate, especially with the Podesta email releases. But there have been so many I've seen so many people on the left just absolutely turbocharged into QAnon conspiracy theories with the Epstein file release. It's like there is a part of me that's like, this was. I'm glad we've got the release with as much information as we do, but at the same time, like our minds are so cooked with conspiracy theories and that have come around social media. I don't know that intellectually speaking, we were ready to have a rational discussion on Epstein that didn't delve into conspiracy theories. And I mean, that's my main issue with it. But no, I mean, going back to Metropolis, absolutely breathtaking movie. Even the complete Metropolis is just absolutely mind-blowing. From a production design standpoint, it's still one of the pillars of cinema. Just not even just science fiction cinema, just cinema in general. That doesn't mean Fritz Lang wasn't a complete piece of shit in terms of the way he treated his cast and crew on this. I mean, stories of him kind of being a tyrant are legendary on this movie. And, look, the fact of the matter is there are a lot of filmmakers who basically treat their cast and crew like shit. I mean, it's not just limited to certain filmmakers you hate. But no, the thing is, it's like, one thing I don't think we really touched on when we talked about The Great Dictator last year is the fact that, like, Hitler, I mean, obviously, part of the reason The Great Dictator's effective as satire is because obviously Hitler's mustache is near identical to the Little Tramps in Chaplin's movies. And, this was certainly a movie that, like, almost as soon as Fritz Lang realized what was coming down the pike with the Nazi Party and Hitler, he hightailed it to America and started making American cinema. Yeah. And that's a big part of where the creation of film noir, where the bringing in of German expressionist ideas into American cinema came into being. And this is just such a breathtaking film. It's a remarkable film. I still am in awe of it every time I watch it. It's one of the absolute greatest pieces of filmmaking of all time. It really is.
Well, I'm holding you to your word. We got to move on, Brian.
We have to move on. And it's probably fitting that we have started to discuss conspiracy theories because I discussed my first paragraph from my recent review of John Carpenter's They Live, basically theorized whether this is where the reptilian conspiracy theory came into play. Because of the fact that it's like this, so They Live basically is based on a short story, I believe, or novella. I think it's a novella. No, it's a short story by Ray Nelson. But anyway, so it is a story of a drifter who comes to Los Angeles looking for work, is struggling to find work. Yeah. And he inadvertently picks up a pair of sunglasses that allows him to see people as they are. And one of the things that he comes to realize is that there are essentially aliens throughout the city of Los Angeles. And this is not far removed from the reptilian conspiracy theory where like the elites are basically reptilians from another dimension that control the earth are the reason that, and this is all come into QAnon, some sects of QAnon too. It's absolutely crazy. You know, in QAA, when they were talking about Epstein, there was a poll where apparently people who believe in the reptilian conspiracy theory tend to poll around 4%.
Yeah.
And 3% of people at the time were satisfied with the official explanation on Epstein. This is a few months before we got the Epstein files officially. So this is when the American government tried to close the book on it. And right as the push for transparency in Epstein really started to kick into overdrive. Mm. So Roddy Piper is the drifter in the movie, and
I know, buddy.
Oh, I know you know. I know you're a wrestling fan.
Yeah, but his name is John Nada because he's not a person in this world, right? He basically doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because of the fact that as I was watching this movie, I messaged you, and this was my first time watching They Live, but
what?
I knew we want to talk. I knew I wanted to talk about within the context of this, and the thing that I was struck by is because, and I posed the question to you, is that this feels like a movie that is better known for the memes than it is on its own terms. Even though it's a cult classic, I feel like it's better known within the culture for its memes than the bulk of the film itself.
I see. This is okay. Oh boy. Try to be brief here, Jason. Okay. So something has changed in our lifetime, you and me. And that is, there wasn't much to do before the internet.
Yeah.
You had books and you had magazines. And magazines were kind of effectively the social media of their day, if you really think about it. It was sort of influencer culture and looking at photos and showing you life of a world that, yada, yada, yada. That you should aspire to, and blah blah blah. So here's where I'm going with this. We were bored a lot, and HBO tended to show like 5 movies and just on repeat.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and if it wasn't, they weren't playing like Eddie Murphy stand up. They were playing, or maybe some Carlin or Gallagher. Gallagher was Showtime though.
Yeah,
you were going to see the same kind of 5 movies over and over and over again. And They Live, in my mind, wasn't even a movie that made it to HBO. It was a movie that was on USA. It was a movie that would air on regional TV. You used to be from this area when you were the area that I'm from, and there used to be a station called WUAB. I don't know if you remember, Channel 43. And
vaguely.
This is the sort of movie that would air on WUAB, Channel 43, on like a Saturday night at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And it was legitimately a B movie.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was, because it would just play on TV constantly, its peers, like when it came out, it was received however it was received by the critical class or whatever, and they did middling business to not good business, whatever, right? But because it just was constantly on television, there was this other these younger generations, Gen X and Zennials and millennials, who grew up with it, and who went into this class of film before the proliferation of podcast and YouTube channels that everybody had seen, but nobody ever talked about, right? Because it wasn't in the top 400 of movies, right? And then when podcast and YouTube started to become a thing, this niche market developed where people like you and I could come on and be like, okay, everybody's talking about Metropolis or The Godfather or Star Wars. I like those movies, but let me talk about this mid-tier movie, these B movies that I like. And now like everything is B movie culture, so that's lost a lot of its novelty. But in the early days of the internet, and then in the early days of podcasting, and the early days of YouTube, it was such a thrill and such a novel concept to find out that other people liked The Thing and thought it was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And liked They Live. And maybe didn't think it was a masterpiece like The Thing, but were like John Carpenter as a whole got reappraised because of cable TV and then the internet.
Yeah.
Because his movies were just constantly on cable. And so it's like, then it turned out like, oh shit, millions of people around the world love Escape from New York, or love, that his run in the 80s, basically, where he's got like just 5 bangers. And it's like, this guy's the man, right? And so like that resurrected, late 70s, I should say, because of Halloween, that kind of resurrected. I got to go back before that even. Assault on Precinct 13 kind of resurrected his career, right?
Yeah,
And so now he's just like, he's in the canon. Like the canon got reinvented in our lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And so now everybody, like, it's just accepted that these movies are, his later stuff, but it's just accepted that, he's got some greater and lesser works. This is probably in the lesser work category, but it's still like this iconic movie. Memes and T-shirts and whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So you're 100% right. So it's like completely flipped the script, because this was like, I don't want to say obscure, but it was cult. And
it was definitely not as, it wasn't as mainstream as Halloween,
no,
as Escape from New York,
no,
as Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like even Big Trouble in Little China, which was seen at the time as like a weirdo lesser of his movies, right? Like when is John Carpenter going to get back to making good movies with Big Trouble in Little China? Like Big Trouble in Little China was a bigger film in a lot of ways than They Live was. But I think because of its like its leanness, its meanness, its cynicism, it's the biggest takeaway that you have to have. I don't know. I can't remember what you said about it because I tried to ignore it so we could say it for the podcast, which I could not ignore what you said about our next film, which is very bothersome. But John Carpenter is like, him and Alan Moore 100% understood who and what Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were.
Yeah.
It was possible to live in the 1980s and not understand that they were fascist.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people said that, but it was not a popular sentiment.
Yeah.
The artist class, the new wave folks, the your Dylans, your Springsteens, your sort of like your lefties would say that. But your liberals wouldn't even necessarily have said that these people were fascists, right? Like it was the Cold War, and there were all these justifications for it. But the fact of the matter is like we are where we are, largely due to Ronald Reagan beginning the process with the Heritage Foundation of dismantling the social safety nets and re-engaging cultural wars and stoking racial prejudices and just being evil, corrupt, corporatist pieces of shit.
Yeah.
It was corpo-fascism. And it took Europeans, like I would say Verhoeven understood it because RoboCop.
Yeah.
I would say that Alan Moore understood it. And I would say Judge Dredd understood it. And I would say Carpenter understood it. And in terms of like, John Carpenter is the John Ford of seeing America for what it really is.
Yeah.
Like he understood, like there's like, even Halloween, there's something fundamental that he understood, and I think still does to some extent, of human nature and American nature. That small town America, like Haddonfield, Illinois, is the kind of place where a young woman is running down the street screaming for help and the neighbors close the blinds.
Yeah.
That is one of the most fucking chilling things in that entire movie. She's at the doorstep screaming for help, is obviously in peril. The person is watching her through the window and just shuts the blinds on her and turns the lights off to leave her to die. A young high school girl.
Yeah.
Because the world of small town America with its wholesome white picket fences is indifferent to the horrors that young women face, is indifferent to the psychopathy of young men who target and stalk women.
Yes.
That's 100% true to life. Nobody was like that. That movie was just supposed to be about the babysitter murders. It was not supposed to have anything else to it. And what Carpenter was the master of was, how do I take something that is unapologetically an exploitation or B movie or genre movie on paper, and how do I put something more into it? The peak of that is The Thing. That's a nasty splatter film creature feature, right? That's a remake. It's like a remake of a remake, actually. And it's like,
yeah.
But he put so much into that about the human condition of paranoia and distrust and Cold War paranoia and so many other things that it stands the test of time. They Live, I don't think, reaches quite to that level. But what I think it clearly understood is it clearly understood what you were talking about in the last segment, which is the technology of the day, the prevalent technology of the day wasn't the internet, it wasn't AI, it was television.
Yeah.
And it was commercialism.
Yes.
Because one of the things I was thinking about is, I know I'm all over the place, but I'm trying to be semi-concise here.
No, you're fine.
One of the things I was thinking about is like over time we forget how things actually are, and we have these like kind of summary statements. And so we say, like, well, the 80s was all about opulence and this, that, whatever. It was a celebration of decadence and opulence and wealth. But if you and I know this, because we've watched a lot of 80s movies, yuppies were almost always the bad guys.
Yeah.
Real estate developers, it didn't matter if it was Crush Groove or Break Into, Electric Boogaloo, or RoboCop or whatever. Like, rich asshole real estate developers were almost always the villains.
Yeah.
Whether they were going to demo the teen center. The only one who was not really a villain is the guy from Caddyshack 2, and that should tell you something, right? Like, everybody else, like rich people, summer rental, Caddyshack, Ghostbusters, like the list goes on and on. Like, they were seen as slobs versus snobs. Like, the snobs, the yuppies, the wealthy class are the assholes. They're terrible, big. Name a movie, Revenge of the Nerds, they're Karate Kid, they're the bad guys.
Yeah.
So what I think people are remembering isn't so much the music and movies, right? Because again, you've got New Wave, you've got punk, you've got Springsteen, you've got a lot of like pop music, like Prince, like they're all talking about class, and in many, there was a lot of protesting in the 80s. People forget all that. Like, the 80s still had upheaval. The 80s in a lot of ways is way more, in a weird way more liberal than today is in certain aspects. In sort of public conversation, there were long form conversation pieces, there were long form talk shows where people would sit down, talk about ideas, and there was James Baldwin was still with us. Like, there was some shit going on. News hadn't been completely corporatized and entertainmified yet. It was in the process of that starting. Shit was still regulated, so like actual information was able to get out. I'm not trying to idealize. I'm just saying it was more complex than we make it out to be. I think what people are remembering isn't movies and music; it's television.
Yeah,
and in particular, it's commercials. Because it was commercials. It was yes, it was TV. It was Dallas. It was Falcon Crest. It was Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It was Entertainment Tonight. It was infotainment and soap operas, but it was the commercials. The commercials of the 80s, because that shit got deregulated under Reagan. It was the commercialism of the 1980s that was constantly marketing to us that consumerism, consumption was good. And consumption and consumerism was how we were going to beat the evils of communism. The movies never really completely bought into that. Yeah, you had your Red Dawns, you had your Dirty Harrys of a kind, you had your Chuck Norris movies and your Cannon films, your right-wing movies, and those were popular. But as much as you had that, you had your Terminators, right? You had your James Cameron movies, you had The Abyss, you had a lot of popular movies that were not right-wing coded at all, were very left or very liberal or were very pluralistic or anti-consumption, anti-consumerism. To an extent, like The Legend of Billie Jean is one of those movies, right? Short Circuit, to an extent, is a movie that's about the, not necessarily about the evils of technology, but it's definitely against the industrial military complex.
Yeah.
And to learn the value of life and all life and sentience and therefore war games, right? That's an extremely popular movie. Cloak and Dagger. There's a lot of messaging being pumped out. For every Rambo movie, there were 10 movies basically being like, let's not blow up the planet. Let's work together. Don't consume, blah, 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 blah. But I think what They Live nails is it's the advertising. It's the television set. It's the sitcomification, the dumbing down of America that Steve Allen talked about, I think in the late 80s, early 90s. It's this dumbing down that says, no, you need to live in this nice house with a big kitchen and use spick and span and polish your furniture every day. And you need to get that new car. And if you want to be fulfilled, you need to spend and get a credit card and go to the mall and shop and do this and be this. And it's the rise of the prosperity gospel. It's the rise of all of that stuff through televangelism. It was TV. Yeah. TV was what was pushing that right-wing consumerism, consumption is freedom mentality. It was magazines, it was advertising, it was billboards. And this movie absolutely nails that to a T. And so much so that when I showed it to somebody recently who had never seen it, I think that some of what I saw as in the early 90s, probably when I first saw this, or late 80s, probably early 90s, what I saw is incisive commentary that I saw it at such a young age, it helped cut through the bullshit of the world to me. Where I was like, oh wait, I got it, right? It's not a subtle movie by any means.
No.
I got it. And I was like, oh shit, it was definitely a kind of a consciousness awakening kind of film for me. But showing to somebody in 2026 or 2025 when I showed it to them, they liked it, they understood it. They were more so it didn't feel as cutting to them. It was almost tragic to them because it was like, well, somebody clearly knew.
Yeah.
And yet we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is as much as it's of its time, you're like, oh fuck, man. The most, what caught me is this most recent watch is the most heartbreaking line is when Piper, who's not a great actor, but is somehow perfect for this role.
Oh yeah. No, it's
He's in the homeless camp. And they're this is the thing that people forget. They're homeless, but they're working.
Yeah.
And he's talking to Keith David, and Keith David's pretty cynical.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I don't know. I believe in America. Piper is the optimist. Piper's I believe the system works. If you just work hard and put your head down, it'll come to you in time.
He's very much parroting the Reagan and Republican ethos of the time. Yeah.
Yes, and of course it's a black man who's wake the fuck up.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is there's a bit of a role reversal because it's Piper's curiosity is what leads him to see that the system is built in a way that you can never get ahead.
Yeah.
And I think the movie is ahead of its time in terms of there's some climate change conversation there, right? They're warming the planet on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing where it hit me like a ton of bricks last year, to the point that I actually cried watching They Live. It's Buck Flower, who is the most prolific drunk in film history. No one played homeless and drunk more or better than Buck Flower. But he's one of the guys in the camp, right? And he's like, there's a message that's trying to break through the signal, and he's like, just get me back to my TV. I don't want to deal with this bullshit, right? And like, that is most certainly what we have seen in the resistance to the truth about Trump.
Yeah.
Is that people can kind of see it, but they prefer not to.
They don't want to admit it.
They don't want to admit it. They want to stay asleep. They just want to get back to TV. Just give me, and now it's the internet, of course, but like, I don't want to see all this. I'm not political. I don't want to hear all this political shit. I just want to get to my shows. I want to get to my Sudoku. I want to get to my streaming. I want to get to my podcast. Like, don't confront me with this, right?
I voted for him because he was going to bring milk prices down. I voted for him because of the economy.
Right. Yes, right.
Because her emails, all that stuff. It all goes back to this simple populist idea that overshadows everything that's wrong about him.
Yes. And even more so, like, you're spot on, but the people just didn't vote at all, right?
Yeah.
The 70 million people or however much it was who like just didn't show up in the last election, who maybe had voted in previous elections and maybe even had voted against Trump. Just like, I'm just done with it. I'm not political or whatever. And it's like, I'm just over the division or whatever excuse they came up with. Like, I don't want to focus on that because it makes me uncomfortable. It gives me a headache to think about it, so I don't want to think about it. I don't want the signal to break through. Just get my entertainment back on. Just get my numbing agent back on. Just keep it out of my sports. Keep it in my, like, I don't like him either, but what can I do about, like, that kind of mentality? But it's that guy who at the end of the movie is in that fucking shareholder meeting in the goddamn tuxedo. Mm-hmm. It's that guy who has the most damning line in this entire movie, and this is when it made me cry. He goes, "Come on, guys. People sell out every day.
Yeah.
Why not get a little bit of a taste?" And I think in the 2.0 era that we're in now with this guy, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And we're seeing people who in 1.0 would like deplatform him and resist him and, fight him off and talk about what a piece of shit he is and how he's a fascist and how he's going to be a dictator. Now, again, we're in a moment where like the sea change is kind of happening again. We'll see what sticks, what doesn't. But there's a lot of people who were either on the sidelines or were actually against him and resisted in the first administration who have just sold out and be like, this is the way it is. Might as well get a taste. Why don't we? Everybody sells out. Why don't we? Get a little taste of the good life for a change, right? Like, there's this justification of, well, can't stop it, can't do anything about it. This is the way it is. So I might as well come out on top. You should too. Join us. Yeah. And that was the tragedy to me of 2025 is watching all of this capitulation to this sort of, for what? To raise shareholder value? Which is exactly the shit that they're talking about in that conference room, that ballroom. They're like, hey, we've made this one of our like most profitable colonies in the galaxy. Like, all of your personal incomes have increased by 700% or whatever it is they're talking about. And it's just like, and what Keith David's line is like, you'd fuck over your own kind, wouldn't you? It's like, it's such a bleak, such a fucking bleak view of humanity. But I don't think it's wrong.
No, it isn't. No, I mean, the thing that was, I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that's so fascinating about this, in a way, while you were talking about it, it's absolutely about consumerism. It's about how we are. It's about how we are controlled through consumerism. This idea of mass consumption that is pushed down our throats, like it's the economy. You have to do what you can economy. It's the exact same message we had post 9/11, where it's like we're scared shitless after the terrorist attacks, but you have to keep spending or else the terrorists win.
Right. Right.
And
you better keep shopping, or otherwise Osama bin Laden wins.
And the thing that while you were talking, the thing that was kind of most interesting about it, the movie, and I didn't necessarily think about it while I was watching the movie, is the fact that in a way, I think like Carpenter, I mean, everybody wants to talk about Orwell's 1984 as, the authoritarian playbook and this whole idea. And certainly he's visionary and he saw a lot of what was coming. And there was an excellent documentary came out called Orwell 2 + 2 = 5 last year. That it was fascinating. And even though this is based on a short story by Ray Nelson, I almost feel like Carpenter was doing his variation on 1984 with this movie.
It's an American 1984 because people forget 1984 is a British. It's set in a British dystopia. This is fascism or dystopia American style.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
More entertaining. I don't mean the movie. I mean sort of it's a more entertaining. It's fascism through consumerism.
It is, and you're right, it's absolutely bleak, but it is fun. And it is still a movie that is meant to entertain. And I do think, look, I mean, the fact, I think you comparing him to John Ford is fascinating. And I think you're right because of the fact that John Ford, whether it's funny because of the fact that there are times where he very much sees America in a black and white lens, through a black and white lens, not just in the stock of film they use, but from the morality of the film, in the morality of the stories they told. But you also look at something like the Grapes of Wrath versus something like The Searcher, and The Searchers, as problematic as The Searchers is, it also gets to this idea of confronting the racism at the heart of America. And, the thing that is, and I think, and so, yeah, I mean, Carpenter's very much, and I think in Carpenter's definitely working within the same mode, but he's doing so through the genres of the modern era, whether it's horror, whether it's science fiction, whether it is, but basically it's horror and science fiction essentially, or action adventure like in Big Trouble in Little China. And but it's like if you cannot, if you're a right winger watching They Live or The Thing or Halloween or even Escape from New York, and thinking that John Carpenter essentially agrees with you, yeah, I've got some bad news for you. You're not paying attention to the film.
Yeah, but these are people who have listened to Rage Against the Machine. And they what they heard was, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me.
Yeah.
And are like, yeah. But what they didn't realize is that's a screed against the right wing government.
Yeah.
That's just they were surprised that it turned out Rage Against the Machine wasn't MAGA.
Well, they're also the people who are surprised whenever Bruce Springsteen says something political. It's like, you made Born in the USA. Did you listen to Born in the USA?
Obviously not. No. Yeah. But I mean, here's that's exactly right. But they watched They Live, and they didn't understand that it was an anti-Reagan, anti-Reaganomics, anti-Reagan film. It's specifically about deregulation, the destruction of unions, the destruction of the middle class and the working class in America, and yada yada yada. So it's bizarre to me that this is like what this just like goes to show you how like deep the indoctrination is. They watch They Live, and they took the implausible science fiction part of it, which is like reptilian aliens live among us, and they're like, that's the documentary portion, that's the true to life portion. And they took nothing about class,
right,
which is an experience we all have every day.
Well, one of the things that is interesting when you're looking at the political aspects of it, it's like originally, you have this female character, Holly, that Piper's character meets up with, and she's scared, but it's like eventually you kind of get the feeling that she believes him, and she's she is supportive of him.
Yes.
But of course, and it's fitting that it's a white woman who kind of you come to realize it's like, oh yeah, by the way, she's part of that class, and she's part of that species that is looking to enslave. Like she's taking advantage of that.
Oh yeah. She's another she is another capitulator.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a co-conspirator. She is complicit, and she sees it as, hey, look, we can't. They've already won. Might as well join them. And she's unapologetic about this. And
well, I mean, she's Erica Kirk. Like you brought up Erica.
Yes,
Kirk.
Yes, she is.
It's like
she's
tears,
Erica Kirk,
where it's like
everything. Yes,
and
great
it's
call.
like everybody else. A lot of people everybody's like, dude, your husband just died, and what are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's like everybody else just sees a rock star and just sees somebody who is part of that upper class that they can support.
What do you make of so this was your first time seeing it. What did you make of the ending? Because I'll give you my impression. I feel like the ending is, I remember being young and I remember being a kid and kind of being disappointed and sad at the ending. Now I'm old and I realize that it's actually one of Carpenter's more hopeful endings in a way, other than like Starman.
Right.
But it's, who does the white woman turn on first, other than giving up the resistance? Like, she betrays Keith David. It's the black man who suffers, and like, just there's so much more to it now that I think Keith David brought to it that maybe wasn't even in Carpenter's script. Where it's like, I think whether consciously or unconsciously, what Keith David is bringing to it is, I don't care whether or not what you're saying is true or crazy or not. It's way too fucking dangerous for a guy like me to get involved.
Yeah.
Not because he doesn't give a shit, not because he doesn't understand the world's rigged. He's the one that is telling Piper the world is rigged. John Nada, the world is rigged to begin with. What he's saying is like, it's exponentially more dangerous for me as a black man.
Yes.
To get involved in whatever the fuck you got going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm well aware the system's rigged. I'm well aware it's unfair. Here's some money. Go take care of yourself. Get lost. Like, go figure it out or whatever. I do think that it's like that protracted, prolonged, almost comically long street fight between them is like, I don't know, you could read too much into it, but like, there is something there, I think, about like racial division again, and like, it's only when they come together that they can kind of like work together to try to overthrow it. And of course, he's the one that is targeted, betrayed first. He's the one who loses his life first, which is exactly right. But I also see something there's a nobility in John Nada's defiance where he may not be able to bring the system down.
Yeah.
But he's sure as fuck going to expose it.
Yes.
But I also think it's realistic that we don't know what the public response is.
Yeah.
We see the initial shock when the unveiling happens, but then it ends. We have no idea what society's reaction is going to be to this.
It kind of, and that kind of reminds me of the end of the Truman Show.
Yes.
Where Truman leaves the cocoon that they've made for him, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, well, what else is on?
Yes.
I understand completely why you think it's bleak, because of the fact that there's so much of human history that makes it easy to feel like ultimately nothing would change.
Yeah.
The system would get exposed.
Yep.
But people would just want to be co-opted into the system.
Yeah.
And you read on Keith David's character, it reminds me of, one of the things that's been fascinating to see on other social media is the way, especially that a lot of Black people have kind of been not on board with the No Kings protests. Mm-hmm. Not because they don't oppose Trump, but because it's almost the commercialized version of the Black Lives Matter protests. And it's like, the reason you're not going to see as many Black people at the No Kings protests is, we know we have a recent history of knowing how that's going to go.
Yes. And I also think what they very wisely know is, because this most recent one, some right-wing gadfly, I don't know if you saw this clip that was going around, comes up to this old lady and he's like, well, I don't see a lot of diversity here, and it's a lot of people that look like us. And he was talking, he's a white guy talking to this old white woman, and she goes, no, it's not for Black people to do this work. They've already been doing it. It's our job to do it and to march in their place. It's our time to step up, because they know if they come here, these protests will be specifically targeted and shut down, because that's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for Black people to be in the front line so they can seize power and call it a terrorist organization, right? Because what we saw was when they tried to play that card against Preddy, who's a white guy working at the VA, who's got a CCW, they snookered the ultra right-wing cult members, that 30% or less. But there was a shit ton of other Trump voters in that mix who all of a sudden were like, whoa, right? Yeah. Now, had they shot a Black guy with a gun at a protest, they wouldn't have cared. Nobody would have cared.
Yeah, they wouldn't have cared.
But the fact that they almost got away with it, Good was almost a tipping point because she was a woman and she's a mom in a minivan.
Yeah.
But she was gay, so you could other her.
Yes.
This guy, their attempts to other him were wildly unsuccessful, to the point they just had to drop talking about him altogether. Mm-hmm. The blowback, even from right-wing celebrities who were like, whoa, not my Second Amendment, because you shoot a white guy with a CCW who's trying to help a woman up from the ground, that was the spell kind of snapped for a second. Whoa, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And that's the point, right? Is if No Kings or whatever else, like Black Lives Matter was led by Black leftists, it's easy for America to turn and be like, well, that's too woke, that's commie stuff. But when it's your Republican, lifelong Republican Vietnam veteran or Iraq War veteran guy who's out there with a bunch of grandmas and a bunch of white kids in frog suits, it's really, 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 really hard for the propaganda machine to be like, well, this is just a fringe thing. This is really just this. They can't play the race card. They can't play the commie card. Like, they don't know how to deal with it. So,
but you're also getting to a point that I think is very valid in criticism of the No Kings protest, which is the idea that when white people essentially have co-opted the responsibility of protesting Trump and protesting the authoritarian state, it essentially becomes a block. It essentially becomes a party. And it essentially becomes one of those things where, yes, there's a message at it, but you have the kids in the frog suits, you have all of these other things, and that really make it easy to not take it as seriously as it should have been.
Yeah, yes, I agree.
At least the American version.
Sure, I agree with that. I do think, though, that mockery, whether it's Voltaire or Shakespeare or whatever, that mockery, fascism thrives on the myth of the invincible strongman.
Oh, yeah.
So when people show up and go, I'm so not afraid of this invincible strongman that I'm going to make a mockery of myself, essentially, like a holy fool kind of a thing, a spectacle, that I'm going to be dancing around in a frog suit. One, that's a recognition of like white privilege, right? Like, I can show up and kind of mock these people, and there's a less of a chance of me getting shot than a person of color just simply peacefully protesting.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's like, I think that points out, I see what you're saying, but to me, it also is like, it's a tool of breaking through the propaganda. These people are not invincible. There's something so absurd about these ICE agents standing there when a guy's fucking dancing to like Axel F in a frog suit in front of him, right?
No, and don't get me wrong. I do agree with you in principle, because I mean, look, we literally talked about the Great Dictator last time, which is making a mockery of Hitler and the Nazi Party. So certainly satire, certainly parody, certainly mockery. I mean, the court gesture was one of the, there's a reason the court gesture was, exalted to a certain extent, because of the fact that it's like, well, you could make, they were the one who could make the mockery. Yeah. But, so yeah, you are absolutely right. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, there are also times where the idea of mockery, the idea of saying, I'm not afraid of you, tips over into just shallow, empty rhetoric and empty performative protest, as opposed to true mockery of the system.
Yeah, but I think the thing, though, is that protesting is performative.
Yes. Oh, it is.
So like, you're demonstrating that you are performing. And I think that, we run the risk of saying, like, I have a hard time in the present moment. I think retrospectively, we can sit and look back and say, okay, like, once we are through this, like, what was the ups and downs, the unintended consequences, the good, the bad. But this is the single largest sustained, most participated in protest movement in modern American history.
Yes.
So in a country where most people are asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that like 8 million or so people showed up at the last one, and they keep gaining numbers, and it does. And like there was like ex-MAGA people at the last one who were like on the record being like, I was duped, I was fooled, I let my like. I have a hard time being like, well, not good enough, because like to bring it back to this movie, it's like, again, he doesn't bring the entire system down. He, in his dying act, he flicks off the powers that be, and he blows up a transmitter and descrambles it so people can see Siskel and Ebert are actually reptilian. And that, you know, this sort of like the conservative America, what's behind conservative America are ghouls.
Right.
And horrible, horrible ghouls who are terraforming our world to make it more inhabitable for them for the purpose of extracting wealth. And they're putting us to sleep. And now you've woken up. Now, and it's like, it's almost like he's challenging us, okay? Now that you see it, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right? It's not a guarantee that the humans are going to win, or that the human beings aren't going to completely bend the knee, or like he doesn't. That's all left to your imagination. That's the challenge he leaves with us. But even though it wasn't a perfect victory, even though it wasn't Star Wars, he doesn't blow up the Death Star and the Empire is defeated or whatever. He gives humanity a fighting chance.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I see these protests or whatever. It's like, I just don't have any time to be like, anybody who's trying something it's just not, it's not pure enough, or it's not good enough, because it's like, right now we're fighting for a fighting chance.
Yeah.
We're not fighting for victory, we're fighting for a fighting chance. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is another area where I believe that Carpenter is way more realistic about humanity than Star Wars is.
Yeah. No, I mean, Star Wars is certainly the optimistic idea that the good guys will always win, the bad guys will always lose, the good guys will ultimately, and the bad guys can come back from the dark side. And, you know, that's one of the things that I think is so striking about Andor, is that it is a piece of authoritarian. It is an example of what we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's taking it's taking a lot of the iconography of Star Wars and turning it into a very direct example of, this is what authoritarianism looks like through the everyday bureaucracy of the empire. Yep. And how the empire continues to, piece by piece, take control of the galaxy, and also how the Rebel Alliance has to find its way to coalesce into a cohesive act of rebellion against the empire. And no, I mean, absolutely. I think, one of the things I will say, I really enjoyed They Live. I thought it was terrific. I'm glad I finally watched it. I'm glad I have I'm glad I have a reference point for all the iconography that the movie has found its way into popular culture because of the movie. And I think that's one of the things that, and it is very much a satire on consumerism, on Reagan's 80s. And I mean, it is still relevant even now. I mean, I think that's one of the things that is, in a way, I mean, it's at least the first two movies, I do think, still find a way to be relevant now. I mean, and we'll get to the third one, which is Paul Verhoeven and Starship Troopers, based on Robert Heinlein's novel. This, and don't get me wrong, when I say that I think the first two are more relevant, I think it's because of the fact that, to a certain extent, their satire of authoritarianism is very relevant and finds itself very topical for what we're going through now. I'm not going to say that Starship Troopers is not relevant to now. And certainly when you look at what happened after 9/11, what happened to the World War on Terror, and what's going on now in Iran and Venezuela, you certainly, and this movie came out 4 years before 9/11. So certainly you have the film as a satire and a nudging of American foreign policy, and the way that we've seen it from the end of World War II to now.
I mean, is Pete Hegseth is a character of Starship Troopers?
Oh, absolutely. He's the Michael Ironside character, just not as easily taken seriously.
Yeah, I see him more as the revolving door of like officials that are in the propaganda pieces of like that, like every time there's a military failure, they're like executed and then they bring in another one. I have a take about Starship Troopers. Okay, so first and foremost, you have to understand that this movie was sold to us in the late 90s. I was a young teen boy, and I was going to see a lot of nudity.
Mm-hmm.
This was 100% other teens went to it, who had kind of more permissive parents in terms of what they could go to the theater to see. And all anybody talked about was the mixed gender shower scene.
Yeah.
And how hot the females in the movie were, in particular Denise Richards, who was like the it girl of the moment.
Yeah.
And then it was how amazing the special effects were, and the monsters and the guns and the violence and whatever. It is true to say, not just for teenagers, but for so many people, including critics, somehow almost nobody understood that this movie was a satire specifically targeting the American industrial military complex. Absolutely. It was not perceived that way. It was perceived as a very earnest action movie that was corny and kind of stupid, technologically amazing, but hollow and empty. I think largely the special effects, considering the fact that they're 30 years old, are still, and CGI, are still pretty good.
Yes.
The nudity of that aside, and the fact that I will say that as adult heterosexuality is realizing that Dizzy is the better option and that Johnny Rico is a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
And that is also part of the point. I love the fact that they specifically cast Casper Van Dien, not because he was a good actor, because he has never been. Not even in the TBN-sponsored Omega Code, which is built on the Bible Code conspiracy theory that was popular in the 90s among evangelical Christians.
We've discussed on the podcast before.
Okay. All right.
We discussed it in our class of 99 series.
I think Michael Ironside's in Omega Code.
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
Isn't he? Is he?
No, I think you're right. You're right. He is.
I think he's in it, and so is our boy from Cabaret and Austin Powers, Basil Exposition, Michael Rourke. He's the Antichrist. Anyway, so Casper Van Dien was cast, and so many of these people were cast because they looked like JCPenney models, basically.
Yeah.
And there was a vapidness to them. Like, they were specifically cast because they wouldn't understand that the movie was satirical, because Verhoeven wanted it played straight.
Yes.
Because he thought that if you played this goofiness earnestly, it would make the satire obvious. Like, it would make it more obvious and more cutting and biting or whatever. And America was so fucking stupid at that time, we still didn't get it. I think I see this as like the bookend to RoboCop. Obviously the first RoboCop.
Right.
RoboCop is the idea that, and really the bookend's supposed to be Showgirls, but but anyway,
No.
RoboCop ends in this idea that it's possible that even after a consumer economy is so consumptive and violent and destructive and inhumane that it can rob you of your humanity, but there's something so indelible about the human spirit that even once capitalism has turned you into a war machine, in essence, or as a product is a better way to put it, that your humanity can still be regained.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie has what could be perceived as a happy ending. There's fanfare, there's celebration, the brain bug is afraid, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But by the end of it, Johnny Rico and whoever has survived, whatever humanity was in Rico is completely gone.
Yeah.
It's the antithesis of the RoboCop ending. Murphy may be a robot or cyborg, but he's still human at the end.
Yes.
He's regained his humanity. In some, even if it's a facsimile of humanity, there's something surviving of his soul. Not a single part of Rico's soul survives.
Correct. Yes.
The bleaker ending is Starship Troopers.
Yes.
Because he has been swallowed whole by the military-industrial complex. And that fanfare and that where you want to be like, yeah! That's the propaganda music that plays at the beginning that's very disconcerting and is very like, ooh, this is like gross and stupid and goofy.
Yeah.
It's got a propagandistic ending and it got people on board. Like we were like, yeah, we beat the bugs. Mm-hmm. But Dizzy's dead. Like all humanity is lost. Neil Patrick Harris is a fucking Nazi. And Johnny Rico is just, come on, you apes want to live forever. And it ends with like, join the war marches on. It's a perma war, right? It's saying to you, the audience, like, join the colonial or join the, no, they're not colonial Marines. What are they called? Join the Federal Marines or whatever they're called. And it does not end in a good place. Even though it's like triumphalistic, it's a horrific ending.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, I will go ahead and admit at the time I was just turned 20 that year. And I was still very much getting into the idea of writing about films and the idea of discussing films and the idea of analyzing films. Yeah. I will fully admit that my media literacy at the time was not great. And so I am one of those people who, when I saw Starship Troopers, I didn't get the satire. I just thought it was a big, dumb science fiction.
It's like Independence Day or something like that.
I didn't care about the characters. I didn't like the characters. I understood the propaganda, the Nazi imagery and stuff like that. Of course, I didn't take it in a way that this had a bigger agenda. At the time, I think I'd seen pieces of RoboCop. I don't think I'd seen the entire thing yet.
That's staggering to me too, man. That's like that should be right in your wheelhouse.
I know. And I'd started to watch Verhoeven. I mean, first R-rated movie I'd seen without my parents was Total Recall, which I still love to this day. I still think it's terrific.
It is.
As far as Starship Troopers, I mean, it has been a long time for me to revisit this movie and I still can't get on board with the idea that it's a great movie. I think RoboCop is still very much ahead of it considerably.
Oh, yes.
I do agree with you about the visual effects. The visual effects are still incredible.
Yeah.
And I understand the satire more. I understand the political ideas more. And it's funny because of the fact that one time my wife Meredith loves this movie. She absolutely loves this movie. I don't think she loves it for the political commentary, the political satire of it. I think she enjoys it because she enjoys war movies. And on that basis, yes, it's an entertaining war movie. If you take it just as the story that it is as told to us, yeah, it's an entertaining action adventure war movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can get past that. I can get into that. I understand it. But at the same time, I mean, and it is, we haven't talked about it, but it is, the screenwriter on this is the same one who worked with Verhoeven on RoboCop. So to your point of this being the bookend to RoboCop is, I mean, I think it's unmistakable. And Basil Polidorus was the composer, so it's like, again, another collaborator from RoboCop. And
I mean, the score is very similar. Da 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 da. It's in both. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny, as I was writing my review of the movie, I did listen to Polidorus's score for this individually, and it's like, oh yeah, this score knows exactly what it's doing.
Oh yeah.
In terms of this is very much going back to like the World War II and Cold War propaganda films. 100%. Is very much what it's doing.
100%.
The Why We Fight series from World War II that Frank Capra directed, and then of course the Cold War propaganda of, oh, this is civil service and civil service because we have to beat the Russians.
Yes.
And I mean, that is, I think that's fascinating the way I've definitely come around on this movie. I definitely respect it a lot more than I did in 1997. I understand what's doing a lot more in 1997 than I did in 1997. I really, and it's funny because of I think it's endlessly hilarious, and it's no doubt a huge part of the satire that Verhoeven's going for, that Rico and his friends are the Americana version of typical American teenagers, and yet they live in Buenos Aires.
Yes.
It's like, okay.
And his name's Rico.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's certainly, I'm sure there's a backstory that Heinlein might have had in the movie, but it's in the book, but it's like, okay, I'll go with you.
Now I've read in places that the idea was like, it's because the book is extraordinarily right wing.
Yeah.
It basically was like a lot of the ideas are presented as just like extremely like, there's no satire. It's not satire.
Right.
The movie is almost a direct mockery of the book.
Yes.
But my understanding, I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is the implication is that the United States has been like blown off the map at some point.
Yeah.
And so what has happened is instead we've just like colonized South America.
Right.
And like that's the kind of the war that was fought, and like the North America just basically doesn't exist or is irradiated or whatever the case is. So we just like invaded the South, and now there's a bunch of white people down there with like Latino names basically.
Right.
And so this is a future in which, some World War III has effectively happened, and much of the earth is uninhabitable, and basically we just colonized elsewhere and took it over. And so you get like Johnny Rico, yeah, like everybody has, like Dizzy Flores, everybody has Latin names, but they're all as white as could be.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean you're and you brought up the actors, and no, I mean I think the actors are definitely, and it's funny because of the fact that I do, now that I've come around on the movie more than I was in 1997, it's like I understand the choice that Verhoeven made to have them basically played straight without,
He wanted like soap opera acting on purpose.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that mean in very straight face, like very much as you would in like a 50s or 60s war movie. But the way it plays in Verhoeven's hands, when it comes to the editing, when it comes to the storytelling, it fits completely. It absolutely fits.
One of the great knocks of this movie when it got reappraised and people were like, oh shit, this is satire, is that there was this other like counterinsurgence that said, yeah, but it's not good satire because it's so cartoonish. And there's the interstitials, which are like exactly like how RoboCop does it, but instead of being media break, they're propaganda films.
Yeah.
And kind of internet coded actually. But it's basically YouTube coded before YouTube existed. But so like there's the one where it's like, there's the campaign of I'm doing my part or whatever, but there's like the kids that are stomping the bugs and the mom is just hysterically laughing like like it's just, and people were like, oh, it's so stupid. And I could have agreed with that. Here's my problem with that. We now live in a world where the White House, on a near daily basis, posts videos where people behave that way.
Yeah.
And not only that, but all of the top people in the administration behave that way, as that woman does.
Like we talked about, it's Chan culture. It's Chan culture's taking over the White House.
Yes. It's that, like, Kristi Noem is the mom in that propaganda piece where she's just hysterically laughing. Caroline Levitt, Pam Bondi, like all of these women. Janine Pirro, for fuck's sake. Like just absolutely. And we'd be remiss if we didn't touch upon this. It's very specific as to why the opposing threat are bugs.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is fascistic dehumanization, in the same way that the Nazis referred to the Jews as vermin.
Yes.
In the same way that the current fascist president refers to people of color as low IQ or animals or savages or rats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trash, garbage. It's the dehumanization to justify war and atrocities.
Yeah.
And again, we're living in a moment where the current senile, bigoted, likely adjudicated sex offender president, who is a fascist, and a despot, is threatening the world like a rapist with nuclear annihilation. He is a Starship Troopers character.
Yeah.
And Pete Hegseth gets up there, is a TV persona, and just gets up there and just, it's one disconnected, right-wing, Christian nationalist, machismo, bad Instagram fitness post saying after another, to the point of incoherence.
Yeah.
Which is exactly how the people in this movie talk. And if anything, Michael Ironside is a more conscientious and thoughtful person than Pete Hegseth. He at least has some kind of an ideology and some kind of principles.
Right. You're right.
Of self-sacrifice. This guy is just, he's a living. He's a living. He's not a propagandist. He's a living piece of propaganda.
Yeah.
He's like a bad Rambo script in human form. It's just,
yeah.
it's trash.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a couple of the Rambo sequels when we talked about films as nationalism. The last episode in this series, and yeah, I mean, you mentioned the co-ed shower. It's like that was definitely one of the things that was sold on when it comes to young people. You're right, and the thing is, I think it's, and one of the things that I think is interesting about that scene, looking at now, is that it feels, we look at, we've got decades upon decades of teen movies where, that sexualize the idea of women in the shower.
Oh, yeah.
So the idea that they are this co-ed shower should be kind of shocking, and we would expect it to be kind of titillating to a certain extent, in the same way that those shower scenes in the past movies were, but really isn't.
Nope.
It really isn't. And
because in a militaristic, authoritarian state, your humanity doesn't exist, and so your sexuality is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because you're not a person. You're, especially where they're at, right? They're just grunts. Yeah. They're not people. They're literally meat for the grinder. We're just the reveal is when they get their assignments and the guy's like, oh, you're going to be in the Corps or whatever. Yeah, it made me the man I am today, and he has no arms and no legs.
Yeah.
Like, that's, and like, what I think about is something we've discussed before, which is when they were doing the sort of post World War II interviews with Nazis and people who were a part of the SS. One of the interviews they did with a guy who had no arms and no legs, and this was, I want to say, like 5 to 8 years after the war. He had no arms, no legs, and basically was still like, Hitler was right, and if he just had more time, he could have like proven it to everybody.
Well, and you brought up the book, They Thought They Were Free.
Yes.
Our first episode of this discussion.
Yeah.
And I've listened to that, and it is harrowing because of the fact that it's like 10 years removed from the end of World War II.
Yes.
It is rattling.
Yes.
To realize that there are definitely people in that book who had misgivings about what happened, but there are a lot of people in that book who don't.
Yes.
And realize and still think that Hitler had the right idea. And it's like, oh my God. And the thing is, it's like, this is why, and this is why when people, yes, nominally speaking, MAGA is a cult of personality.
Yes.
And yes, I'm sure that when Trump eventually goes off the mortal coil, there are going to be people who break away, who the spell is broken, and they try to get on with their lives and try to act like and start to realize the ramifications of what MAGA meant.
And some of that is just beginning to maybe start now for some people.
But the fact of the matter is, but here's the problem with that idea. And it's the fact that MAGA is so embroiled in the modern Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And fundamentally speaking, the Republican Party still believes the exact same shit that they've believed for decades.
Yes, I think the bleakest thing that's going to come from all of this, and I hope I'm wrong about this. I'm not usually wrong about bleak stuff. I may be ahead of schedule, but I may get some of the details right. But I get bleak outlines pretty accurate, which takes no great gift. I think what we're seeing is that what's going to come after this guy is going to be even more extreme.
Yeah.
The Nick Fuentes, the Groypers, the complete, unapologetic Nazism.
Yeah.
Not coded, not dog whistles, not low IQ, just flat out, Hitler was right, genocidal maniacs. Mm-hmm. Now, will that take root immediately? I don't know. Probably not immediately. It could, but it depends on. Honestly, it depends. Like, without getting too much in the weeds of where we presently are, if you study history, history is not a predictor of the future, but it is a good indicator of likely outcomes.
Yeah.
And history isn't written, and history is dynamic, and we're changing it all the time, right? And history always has weird bends and breaks that you could never anticipate happening. So we have no idea what events are going to unfold. But you can kind of say, here's where I think we are maybe on our current trajectory, or here's analogs to history or whatever. What's so terrifying about the moment that we're in is two things are simultaneously true. I think MAGA is at its all-time weakest because I think Trump is at his all-time weakest, mentally, physically. And strong men, cults of personality lose their hold when the center of the cult is weak and diminished. And at a certain point, you put a carrot in a stick, you got to deliver the carrot. And all cults break down when the cult leader can't deliver on the carrot, right?
Yeah.
But like Jonestown, that's when it's at its most dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact that they couldn't deliver on Guyana is what led into the acceleration of his drug use, suicidal ideation, abuse, exploitation, paranoia, and you end up with a bunch of dead people. Cults, fascism, all of it, because they have similar psychological dynamics, they become, the weaker they get, the more dangerous they become.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not, in a weird way, the more diminished he is and the closer we are to his end and the end of MAGA as we knew it, which we are on that road, the more the danger doesn't go down, it goes up. It escalates exponentially. So we two things are true at the same time. We can say MAGA is getting weaker and he is becoming more dangerous.
Yes.
What we don't know is how and when and if we'll get to the other side of that. Will he kill us all? Will he kill himself? Will he just kill over and die? Will Vance try to take over? Will there be an internal coup? What will Peter Thiel do? We don't, there's so many things we don't know.
And I was going to say, I have a very hard time seeing Trump live out this term as president. I don't see it. Whether it is his death, whether after the midterms, provided that they are free and fair,
right?
Whether they send the clear message that people are sick of this, and
I think is true. Yeah,
and Republicans use it as a pretext to whether it's the 25th Amendment, whether it's follow along with impeachment.
Well, and the thing is too, they'll be through most of their primaries too. So the cudgel he has over them is going to be gone.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, but the thing is, if they were to do, because so many people, especially yesterday, were like 25th Amendment, and now they don't want to do that. You really think they wouldn't have done that already if they wanted to? They don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's more likely for them to try that after the midterms
Yeah.
when he's on the back end of this term.
And it positions Vance to be able to serve 10 years.
Yes. Not that I think he would ever. And see, that's the thing. It's like, yes, and I'm going to kind of contradict myself from a bit earlier and say, while the cult ultimately is so engrossed in the Republican ideology that I don't see it breaking off as severely as other cults have in the past. Mm-hmm. I also, you need a leader to lead, and there are so many people who just, like, J.D. Vance is as charismatic as a wet bag of socks. I mean, right. He really is. Like, he has no charisma with a lot of, with a lot of the base, with a lot of Trump's base. And so the idea that he would, and that's where that is where the Nick Fuentes, the ultra extreme right, true and blue fascists and accelerationists are going to be the most dangerous.
Yes.
Because in a contested Republican primary, there's a very strong chance that Vance loses and loses convincingly.
Yes.
To somebody even more extreme.
To a Tucker Carlson or to a Nick Fuentes or someone we don't even know yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think because history breaks in weird ways, I think that this is going to sound so ridiculous and it's going to sound like science fiction. I think there's an equal chance, maybe not equal. I can't quantify these chances. I think that there is a distinct possibility that we could also end up in, maybe not immediately, but again, depending upon how all of this plays out, which no one knows, in a new progressive era. And by progressive era, I mean a Roosevelt-style progressive era.
Yes, yes.
I don't mean necessarily like progressive as we've met it over the last, like the Obama progressive. I mean...
No, I know what you mean. I know what
Teddy Roosevelt and the Franklin Delano Roosevelt progressive era. I know that sounds insane, but when you look at history, you can't deny that as much as this soil is the soil from which Nazism thrives, it's also the soil in which progressivism thrives.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what's going to bear more fruit first. And I know that we've been on we've been into a descent into hell, and right now we feel like we are in hell. And but the sentiment right now is not the sentiment that we had even after 9/11. It's not the sentiment of the 80s. It's not the sentiment of Starship Troopers where I'm from Buenos Aires and I say, kill them all. That is not on the left or the right, the mentality right now of the American people. The American people are tired of military propaganda. The American people we're more in a post-Gilded Age, 1920s, 1960s potential era, or on the verge of that, than we are the 1980s or one of these other eras. Now, while what that means is we're in for a lot of upheaval.
Yes, I agree with that.
An incredible amount of upheaval, an incredible amount of displacement, probably an incredible amount of suffering.
Yes.
What comes out of that is either going to be a new progressive era that actually rebuilds the social safety net for the 21st century and puts us on better footing. And maybe not globally. We're not talking about us like in the relationship as a superpower. I'm talking about domestically. Or, the bleakest possible outcome. And the truth is, nobody knows.
Yeah.
But I think, either one of those is a likely outcome. And I think we want the RoboCop ending. I think we want, okay, we may be kind of fucked up and we may be mostly machine, but we're still human, right? Like, we want, like, we kind of want the They Live ending. We want the Metropolis ending. We want the, okay, let's make a more just society, or at least put future generations and other, it may not be us, like in Nada's case, but it may be somebody else who can undo the system and make it more just. We don't want the Starship Troopers ending where an entire generation of people are just completely and utterly, all of their innocence and humanity is lost to the war machine as they buy into endless war against a species that really, like, it's kind of our fucking fault against the bugs. Like, like, if we had just, like, not tried to colonize space, they wouldn't be defending their home planet. Because, like, ultimately, we're the original aggressor of that conflict.
And it's funny because of the fact that I brought up to you in DM, because I could have sworn that was something that this movie pointed towards, and it doesn't.
No.
That came in the sequel. I think that came in the first sequel, which is not good.
No.
Not a good movie. But I think it does come in the first sequel, that the realization that we're the aggressors.
Yes.
In this case. I'm pretty sure that does come out. And no, I'm with you. I think that, I hope that you're correct about the new progressive era coming out. I do think that, especially with the military aggression in Iran, even though the ruling Ayatollahs are extremists in their own right, we had no right to do what we did.
No.
And I don't believe we have an exit strategy in terms of making life better for the Iranian people. I just don't. I don't believe that that's in our end game. And
the Iranian people don't factor in.
Because it ultimately wasn't in Iraq. It ultimately wasn't in Afghanistan.
Right.
And, you know, and I mean, it wasn't what we were trying to do in Vietnam. It just wasn't. We just don't have this history of fighting these wars for a moral good. We haven't had that since World War II.
No, and also, like, you don't actually, like, you have an effective code of personality, but you don't have an effective propagandist.
Yeah.
Because to just get up there and go, we can't pay for health insurance, we can't insure your jobs, we can't pay for your daycare, affordability is a hoax, we have to put all of your taxes, we're going to have to raise your taxes and put it all into warfare.
Yeah.
First of all, like, that is legitimately the complete opposite of everything he ran. Now, you and I and a lot of other people knew he was full of shit, but a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
So when they say, I didn't vote for this, we can very blithely say, yes, you did. But
you just believe it.
Yeah. But in actuality, in their mind, right, in the reality of their mind, they didn't vote for this.
Right.
So we're not shocked, but they are...
Yeah.
The way that you and I can understand, they are legitimately shocked.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he doesn't have, the coalition is not, it's only going to deteriorate from here.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Epstein stuff, like, people, and you know this more than anything, but people are really underestimating, like, how much that shook his base.
Yeah.
Because they really, many of those people legitimately saw him and believed him to be some kind of reformer, some kind of savior figure who is so wealthy he can't be bought, and he's going to go in and reveal all the deepest, dirtiest secrets of the neocons and the liberals and expose all of their the reptiles, and he's going to liberate us, set us all free, and make sure that we're never, he's going to rebuild America and put us first, and we don't have to fight any more endless wars, and blah, 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 blah. And again, you and I can look at that and go, well, that was always bullshit. But they didn't think it was.
No.
And he's going to release the Epstein files and expose the pedophile cabal. And then it's like, not only is he not going to expose it, it turns out there probably is a pedophile cabal, and he's at the center of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's going to do everything in his power to cover it up. Mm-hmm. They legitimately didn't see that coming. Again, you and I can't reckon
all of the fingers point to that.
Yeah,
like literally, all the fingers pointed to that.
No, yeah, you're 100% correct. But like again, I don't know why they didn't see it, but they couldn't.
Because the thing is the unfortunate truth about, as much as they rail on about celebrities in politics, Donald Trump is a celebrity. He has been, and he is somebody who has been known for decades.
50 years, probably. At least.
And he has been known he has been held up as this scion of business who is extremely wealthy. They don't think about the fact that his wealth is pretty much all come from generational wealth. He's bankrupted himself multiple times over.
Yeah.
But you look at something like The Celebrity, The Apprentice, and it held him up as this great celebrity businessman, and people lapped it up.
I know we're kind of going backwards here, but in a way we're not. And I know we got to close. But one of the things I did want to bring up when I was thinking about this is, I have this weird proclivity of, I'll sometimes go on YouTube and I'll just pick like a random, whether it's Nightline or even if it's like a random Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'll pick like their evening news. Whatever I can find for, say, like 1986, let's say, right? Because there's just all this like regional or national news because people had VCRs and people were taping everything.
Yeah.
Just on YouTube. And I just watch a news broadcast from 40 years ago or 30 years ago or 20 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever strikes my fancy. And one, it's amazing to see like how many of the things that we are living through today, Iran, the Ayatollahs, this, that, it's just been going on forever.
Yeah.
It's just different permutations of the same shit. And how much of it's either progressed or regressed or whatever, like it's just very interesting. And the world is almost always on the brink of something terrible. And the economy's almost always in shambles. And like, it's just like on and on it goes, right? And I'm not trying to normalize the moment that we're in. I'm really not. Because I don't think it is normal. I think there are extraordinary elements to the current moment that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think what was very interesting about news from, say, the 80s, and I've also looked up a lot of print media, specifically about Trump, is it was mostly, he was like a curio. He was like a cultural conversation piece. And the tone of the coverage of him, again, we're not talking about lifestyles of the rich and famous and like infotainment sort of shit. We're talking about actual news.
Right.
Not even the tabloid stuff. Actual news. So much of the coverage of him is, this guy is full of shit. And he knows that we know he's full of shit. But we don't know if he knows he's full of shit. Like, that's the tone and tenor of so much of how he was positioned. Is this guy's making all these bold claims, he's braggadocious, he's claiming this, he's claiming that. But there was always a strain of like almost like circus geek.
Yeah.
Like there's something abnormal about this guy, and people are interested in him because he's so abnormal, and he's so obviously a con. because he says one thing, but here's what reality says. And it was like he was fascinating in that kind of way, because it was like, we know he's a con, we know he's not who he says he is. And like the whole big thing is, here's this nouveau riche guy from the outer boroughs who Manhattan society refuses to accept. And so he's constantly having to make these like bigger and bigger spectacles of himself and make these bigger and bigger claims of success to try to get the acceptance of this old blood, blue blood class that will never accept him, because he's uncouth and because he's vulgar and because he's phony and he's chintzy and he's all of these things, right? And that's the tone and tenor of like how the New York Times used to write about him, or how any of the old publications, or how even like Nightline would cover him, or when he would appear or whatever. Is like, here's this like young guy who is positioning himself as like the new Rockefeller, but is mostly full of shit. And he's also like he's gauche, so he's constantly breaking all of these taboos. Look how gauche this guy is. Look at how indifferent he is to good taste. Blah 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 blah. Most of the coverage about him, my point is, was not a celebration of him. It wasn't an interrogation either. It was more of like gawking at him.
Yeah.
And we also know that like he begged for a lot of that coverage. Like he would get on the phone and just beg and beg and beg to be included. And if there was a story about somebody that painted somebody else in a better light, and he thought he should be talked about it, and he would call it and complain, and like he's been the same guy his whole life. A lot of bluster up front, a lot of like, he would accept these like horrible, horrible deals. And he didn't care what the terms of the deal was, as long as the person he made the deal with would go to the press and say that he won. And like, he's applying that same kind of like, the only thing that matters is the image.
Yeah.
To geopolitics, to negotiating against a terrorist state. It's just, well, we have a peace treaty, but you don't. Right? The only thing that matters is the headline. Anyway, but like a They Live situation is, it wasn't really news that built Trump. It wasn't even the 80s that built Trump. It wasn't, and certainly wasn't the 90s. He was a pariah and a laughingstock in the 90s. He was the punchline of every joke. It was reality TV that built Trump. Yeah. It was television, fiction presented as reality. Mm-hmm. Here's this bum celebrity who we don't have to pay any money to because he's fucking broke. Here's some has-been celebrity that we can dig up from the 80s, who you kind of remember from the past, and we can build a pseudo-reality around him that presents this like complete counterfeit game show as if it's a real business. And that's what built the image of him being successful. Yeah. His actual image in the height of his actual businesses in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s was that he was a fucking idiot and a failure. It was the propaganda of reality TV and Mark Burnett, also right-wing Christian, Australian version, that created the Trump that we now live with today, the persona that got him elected. And so that's the power of propaganda. That's the power of television. That's the power of the internet. That's the power of the signal, so to speak. Yeah. Is it can actually warp and change reality. It can, like, we all knew going into the early 2000s that he was a failure. Mm-hmm. Then the world came to believe that he was a billionaire, which he never was until he became president, ironically.
Propaganda and the manipulation of the truth definitely plays into all of these movies, whether you're dealing with the propaganda, the satirical propaganda films of Starship Troopers, whether you're talking about the radio broadcasts that hide the truth of the elite class and They Live, and whether you're talking about the use of technology to manipulate the masses in Metropolis. I cannot think of a better way to end this episode. And I mean, we did get off tangent with Starship Troopers. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to say about Starship Troopers. No. I mean, there is, but there isn't. Like, there's also this idea of toxic masculinity that comes into play, but all is wrapped in this idea of selling the image of war as a fundamental good, going to war as a fundamental good, as something that only a true citizen would do. And, you know, to your point, like the propagandists that we are seeing right now, they're trying to sell us this, they suck. Like, they don't. Like, you know, a lot of people have said, oh, well, Stephen Miller's the Goebbels of this administration. It's like, dude, Stephen Miller's a moron. Stephen Miller is not savvy. Stephen Miller has no instincts whatsoever. He just has hatred.
Yes.
And, you know, the fact of the matter is, it's like, there's also Clancy Brown in Starship Troopers, who he and Ironside give, I think, the best performances in our movie. Yeah. I completely forgot about the Mormon outpost that's overrun by bugs. And so, like, I completely forgot about that in this movie. And, you know, it's, of course, a take on how, you know, religious people will take up in even the worst conditions if they feel like they can, you know, if they feel like a spiritual reason to go there. And it basically plays off this idea of missions, of going out into the world and trying to convert people, and, you know, how it ends up for them and the masses. You know, and of course, at the end, when they take the big bug into, it's obviously Nazi experimentation on the oppressed.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a lot there's a lot in Starship Troopers to talk about, and I'm glad that we were able to discuss it within the context of these movies, within the ideas of what we're dealing with in the modern day. And Jason, as always, it has been a privilege, and it'll always be a great honor to discuss movies with you. I ever since we first did several years ago for Binge Movies, I love every time we talk.
I failed you though. We're at 3 hours.
I'm aware. It's not lost on me. And look, the fact of the matter is, there are two people involved with this. There are two people, and I'm the host. I'm the host. I recognize that, but you know what though, I will take it because of the fact that we don't talk a lot outside of these podcasts, and it's always it's a credit to you as a podcaster, as a guest, as somebody who studies film, and somebody who has been around film culture over the past few years online, that we can find these things to talk about. Wide variety of things to talk about for 3 hours. And yeah, as always, is a pleasure. And it will always be a pleasure.
Well, I will end by saying this. I'll end my part of this podcast by saying this. This may very well be my last final guest appearance in terms of recording. I don't know about release because I've recorded some of their stuff. Who knows about people's release schedules? But in terms of recording, and if it is, I can't think of a better conversation, and I can't think of a better person to have my final podcast conversation, maybe ever, than the Brian Scuttle. So it's been an honor, man. Sonic Cinema, been around for decades at this point, fighting a good fight of film conversation in the ever-changing landscape of dystopian media hell. So God bless you, Brian.
And the fact of the matter is we were talking about, and the thing is, it's like we were talking about performative protests and all that stuff. And the fact of the matter is, it's like, when you and I first started brainstorming the idea of this series through our episode of it, our first initial episode of it, I looked at this as my form of protest against what's happening now, and my outlet to get what I need to talk about in terms of what's happening in the world now. And it's one of those things where it's like, this has been so freeing, and it's also been great to give me an opportunity to either rewatch these movies or watch these movies for the first time and see and look at them from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And, Jason, I mean, I'm truly honored that if this is the end for you as a guest, that it is here. I cherish you as a fellow podcaster, as a fellow film critic, as a friend, and we will definitely keep in touch.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And if you ever feel the need, that itch to get back to guest podcasting, my DMs are always open to you, sir.
Thank you. It's an honor. Just because I'm going away for who knows how long doesn't mean that the shows still aren't out there. So the biggest thing that I would like to plug before I go is the Slashers season 1 and season 2. We've covered the 1980s, I like to say, if not exhaustively, conclusively, from 1980 to 1989, all of the slashers, every kind of slasher, every tier of slasher, from regional drive-in, curiosity, cult, boutique Blu-ray release, stuff that hasn't even ever been released on Blu-ray, stuff that's extremely hard to find, international slashers, splatter films. We cover everything from Germany to Japan to Europe to Italy, and obviously all of the American stuff to your top-line franchises. Covered it all. Even did a couple of special episodes. We did one on Peeping Tom, and then we did one on a new slasher, which was a remake of Deadly Night, Silent Night. So we did a new slasher. We did one of the progenitors of the slashers. We did the entire 1980s. So I didn't do it just by myself. I did it with two great podcasters, Paul from The Countdown and the absolutely fabulous Megan Kearns, previously of Spoiler Piece Theater, who you can hear on Women in Session and In Session Film and their own, what's the name of I was on with her when we talked about Network.
Joan Ahmed.
Yeah, but she's with...
In the league.
Yeah, in her own league. Yep. So, yeah, and you just hear her, read her everywhere. Megan's great. And so it's been an honor to do that. It's a limited series. I know some people want series 3 of that one, and I don't know. So as of right now, I'm out of the game, but never say never. The only thing for sure about Jason is that nothing is ever for sure.
I feel like that. I feel like that is the truth for all of us. I want to thank Jason once more for joining me on the podcast. It is always a pleasure. And yes, we did go over 3 hours once again, but you know what? It was worth it. It was worth it. I love these discussions. Next up on the podcast, we're going to get more fascism in cinema from a few different angles and maybe even some new guests here. The Atlanta Film Festival is coming up. Look for red carpet interviews and interviews in general from that. That's going to be it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you, as always, for Join me at wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google, or Good Pods, whether it is at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema, and of course, my main place online at www.sonic-cinema.com. Thank you very much.